Night has always held a peculiar kind of silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence that listens, that waits, that seems to hold more than it reveals. When we step into the hours after dusk, when lamps glow faintly, and the world folds itself inward, there is a sense that something stirs beneath the ordinary. It is in this atmosphere that legends take root, where forgotten roads are walked again, and where whispers speak of a city that lies beyond memory, a place some call the City of Eternal Night. The name alone is enough to set the imagination adrift. What is such a city? Is it built of stone, like the ruins of once great empires? Is it woven from stories, like the golden illusions of cities that never truly were? Or is it something far deeper, a dream that humanity has carried across centuries, shaping it differently in each culture, yet always with the same haunting outline, a place where the sun never rises, where shadows are not banished, but made permanent? The ancients often spoke of the horizon as a boundary. Beyond it lay unknown lands, seas untraveled, mysteries untold. Yet the horizon of night was more profound, for it was a horizon not of geography, but of existence itself. To imagine a city without dawn was to imagine stepping across that line into something that defied the rhythms of life. Every city we know breathes with light and dark, morning markets and midnight rests. But the City of Eternal Night, if it exists, rests in a stillness that never breaks. This journey begins not as a march, nor as a hurried expedition, but as a gentle walk down a quiet road, a path lined with trees whose branches whisper in the wind, a road stretching forward into the dusk where the air grows cool and the colors fade. The traveler does not rush, for haste has no place here. The City of Eternal Night cannot be reached by speed, only by patience, by surrendering to the rhythm of slow steps. It is important to understand that the city is not fixed to one map. It drifts across history, like a shadow that never clings to a single wall. The Greeks may have glimpsed it in their tales of Hades, the Norse in their vision of Niflheim, and the Buddhists in realms of endless twilight. In medieval whispers, it became the city of the dead. In Victorian imagination, the city of fog and forgotten souls. Always it returns, reshaped but familiar, the same dream clothed in new attire. To follow the path toward it is to walk through human memory itself. Each ruin we find on earth, a crumbling arch, a weather-worn road, an abandoned temple, feels like a fragment pointing toward the idea. Not that the City of Eternal Night was ever physically real in every case, but that it reflects the fate awaiting every place built by human hands. In time, every city turns toward shadow. Stones that once gleamed in the sun grow cold, voices that once filled markets are silenced, and so every city becomes, in some sense, part of that eternal night. But the mystery endures because of contrast, for as much as we fear the dark, we are drawn to it. Night frightens, yes, but it also soothes. It is the time when minds rest, when dreams rise, when the world slows to a pace more gentle than day allows. Could it be that the City of Eternal Night is not a place of terror, but of rest? That it calls to us not with menace, but with a lullaby? The tension between fear and comfort, light and shadow, makes the path ahead both unsettling and strangely inviting. Think of how stories are told around firelight. The flames dance, but beyond the circle of warmth lies darkness. In that darkness, we imagine eyes watching or voices whispering. We imagine that if we walked beyond the fire's edge, we might stumble upon another world entirely. That instinct, that sense of something more, is the same impulse that birthed the legend of the city. Perhaps it is not so much a physical destination, but the idea that if one walks far enough into the night, one will arrive at a place where night itself becomes permanent. And so, as we begin, let us picture it together, a gate, half buried in dust, standing alone in a field. Beyond it stretches a road, paved or broken, no one can quite tell. The air is hushed, the kind of hush that belongs not to absence, but to anticipation. You step forward, passing through the gate, and the road takes you further from what you know. Each step feels less tied to the earth, more bound to the echoes of countless travelers before you. It is here that the journey into the city of eternal night begins, not with arrival, but with a whisper in the darkness. And that whisper is subtle. It does not demand, it does not shout. It lingers at the edge of hearing, suggesting that this road you walk is older than you can imagine, older than history, older perhaps than memory itself. Others have taken it, some turned back, others vanished, swallowed by the distance. You walk not only for yourself, but as one more in a line of seekers. The city is always ahead, always veiled, always waiting. As the first steps are taken, the question rises, is this city a warning, or a promise? Is it the silence of forgetting, or the peace of eternal rest? No one can answer yet. But with every footfall, the horizon deepens. The night grows thicker, and the world of daylight begins to fade behind. The only way forward is to keep walking, to follow the path wherever it leads. This is the opening of our story, a story that wanders through ruins, through myths, through dreams and memories, always chasing the shape of a city no map can hold, a city born of fear and comfort, of shadow and memory, of silence and song. The city of eternal night waits somewhere beyond the reach of day, and now, with the whisper of the darkness guiding us, we begin our path toward it. Every journey begins with a road. Yet not every road leads to a destination. Some stretch forward, with promise lined with milestones and markers, carrying travelers safely from village to village, city to city. Others, however, vanish into silence. They slip beneath weeds, disappear into forests, or crumble into dust, leaving only the faintest trace of where countless feet once walked. These are the roads that linger in history, like unanswered questions. They do not tell us where they end. They only whisper that they once led somewhere, perhaps to places that no longer exist, perhaps to nowhere at all. The ancients knew the power of roads. The Roman Empire stitched its territories together with stones so precisely laid that many remain to this day. Soldiers marched upon them, merchants wheeled carts, and messengers carried orders that shaped the fate of empires. Yet if you walk those same paths now, you find stretches swallowed by moss, winding into forests where no traveler passes. They were once arteries of a living world, pulsing with purpose. Now they are bones, silent remnants of a vanished body. On the edges of deserts, too, forgotten roads lie buried under drifting sands. The Silk Road was not one road, but a vast network, carrying silk, spices, and secrets across continents. Oases once bloomed with markets, where caravans exchanged goods and stories. Today, many of those waypoints are nothing more than scattered stones. The desert has reclaimed them, as if reminding us that every road eventually belongs to the earth. Stand in such a place at dusk, when the wind begins to stir, and you can almost imagine the caravans returning, the sound of camels' feet pressing into sand, the voices of traders carried faintly in the air. Yet, they never come. Only the horizon stretches endlessly, the road fading into nothing. Why do such roads captivate us? Perhaps it is because they mirror our own uncertainty. We walk forward in life, believing in direction, trusting there is a destination waiting. But the truth is that not every path resolves. Some journeys end without arrival. Some roads dissolve into shadow. The idea of roads that lead nowhere is unsettling, yet strangely magnetic, for they remind us that mystery lies just beyond the edge of the known. Stories too are filled with such roads. Ancient folk tales often speak of travelers who wander off the main path, following trails that twist deeper into forests or mountains. Sometimes they find hidden kingdoms, places of wonder. Other times they vanish, never to return, their fate left untold. These tales echo the human fascination with the unknown. Turn the side path that beckons with quiet insistence. Perhaps it is nothing but a clearing, or perhaps it is the road to the city of eternal night. There are places in the world where roads feel like invitations to memory. In rural Europe, you can find hollow ways, sunken lanes carved deep into the earth by centuries of footsteps and cartwheels. Walking through them is like walking in the footprints of ghosts. The walls rise high on either side, roots dangling, light filtering faintly from above. Such roads seem to pull you forward, though you may not know where they end. To step upon them is to feel the weight of countless others who once passed, and to sense that you too are being drawn into a story without clear conclusion. And in distant mountains, narrow paths cling to cliffsides, winding toward valleys hidden from view. Pilgrims once took such roads, believing they led to sacred shrines. Some surely arrived, others were lost to storms, rockfalls, or exhaustion. The mountain does not reveal which pilgrim was blessed and which forgotten. All it shows is the faint line of a road that winds upward and vanishes into mist. Standing there, gazing at that ribbon of earth against stone, one cannot help but wonder, does it still lead anywhere, or has its destination long since crumbled into legend? In every forgotten road lies a tension between the practical and the mysterious. Once they were built with purpose, trade, worship, conquest. But as centuries passed, that purpose faded, leaving only the path itself, and when a road loses its function, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes symbolic, a reminder of impermanence, a suggestion of the unseen. The city of eternal night is often imagined at the end of such a road, not because we believe it literally lies there, but because these paths teach us that destinations can vanish while the road remains. Think of a road you have walked that seemed to go on endlessly, stretching forward with no clear end in sight. The more you walked, the more you felt that perhaps it would never deliver you to a place, that perhaps walking itself was the only meaning it carried. That sensation, a journey without conclusion, is the essence of these mysterious roads. They mirror the eternal night, not in darkness, but in uncertainty. Archaeologists sometimes unearth roads that stop abruptly in fields or vanish into riverbeds. Questions linger: where did they once lead? To a town that has disappeared? To a shrine now forgotten? Or were they never completed, left unfinished by those who began them? These unanswered puzzles feel alive with possibility. Each missing destination becomes a canvas for imagination. Perhaps some led to cities we have never found, now buried deep beneath soil and stone. Perhaps some truly led nowhere, built in hope but abandoned to silence. The traveler walking such a road today carries not only their own footsteps but the weight of absence. Every bend in the path whispers of what might have been, what once was, and what is now gone. And in that whisper, the city of eternal night feels closer, as if waiting just beyond the last visible stretch. The path that dissolves into grass or forest may not end at all. It may continue unseen into another world. And so we return to the thought that began this section. Not every road leads somewhere, yet every road leads us forward. Even when it dissolves, even when it ends in silence, the act of walking changes us. Perhaps that is the true destination, the transformation of the traveler, not the arrival at a city. But still the mystery lingers. When the road fades and the world grows dark, what if just beyond our sight, it continues? What if all roads, whether we know it or not, eventually find their way to the same place, the eternal night that swallows cities, empires, and memories alike? And so as we leave behind the forgotten roads of history, swallowed by forest, desert, and time, the path deepens. Ahead lies the thought of cities themselves, those destinations that once stood bright, only to fall into silence. The road has brought us here, to the edge of another mystery. If roads fade into nowhere, what becomes of the cities they once served? To answer that, we must step further into the shadows, where ruins wait to tell their story. Every road, no matter how long or broken, once pointed toward a city. Roads were built for arrival, for trade, for gathering, for the simple need of human beings to come together. Yet, when the road dissolves, the city it once served often dissolves with it. Across the world, scattered across deserts, jungles, and mountains, lie the remains of cities that once shone brightly, only to be swallowed by silence. These are not merely ruins of stone and brick, they are fragments of memory, testaments to the truth that no matter how powerful, No city escapes the slow approach of night. Consider Babylon, a city whose very name has become synonymous with grandeur and mystery. Once, it was the beating heart of Mesopotamia, with walls so vast, they were said to be one of the wonders of the ancient world. Gardens were said to hang in the air, defying gravity and drought, a vision of paradise crafted by human hands. And yet, today, Babylon is a ruin, the walls are broken, the gardens, if they ever truly existed, are gone. What remains is a scattering of stones beneath the sun, visited by scholars and wanderers who try to imagine the splendor that once was. Babylon was not merely a city, it was a dream of immortality, but like every dream, it faded. The city of eternal night seems to echo there in the gap between what Babylon once was and what remains now. Petra, too, stands as a city, both visible and absent, carved directly into the red rock of Jordan's cliffs. Its facades rise like ghostly masks, majestic, intricate, enduring. The Nabateans built it as a hub of trade, where incense, spices, and silk passed between empires. Yet, even stone was not enough to protect it from time. When trade routes shifted, Petra was abandoned, left to the desert winds and the silence of canyons. For centuries, it lay hidden, its entrances guarded by cliffs, its existence remembered only faintly in legend. Rediscovered by outsiders in the 19th century, it appeared almost like a mirage, a city that had been asleep, waiting in eternal night. To stand before its carved facades today is to feel both awe and unease, beauty that has survived, but a life that has long since departed. Far to the west, in the dense jungles of Central America, lie the ruins of the Maya. Cities like Tikal and Palenque were once vibrant centers of culture, filled with pyramids, observatories, and plazas. The Maya charted the stars, carved their histories into stone, and built cities that rivaled the great empires of the Old World. And yet, the jungle crept in. Trees pierced walls, vines smothered temples, roots cracked the very foundations of plazas where once ceremonies unfolded beneath the gaze of the cosmos. For centuries, these cities were lost entirely, hidden beneath green veils, until explorers stumbled upon them. Imagine the moment of discovery, cutting through foliage, hearing the cry of birds, and suddenly seeing stone steps rise where you expected only wilderness. The city of eternal night lingers here too, for what is more haunting than a city so alive that it once touched the stars, now returned to silence beneath leaves? Angkor in Cambodia tells a similar story. At its height, it was one of the largest cities in the world, its temples magnificent, its reservoirs vast, its power unrivaled, but power wanes. Wars, drought, shifting rivers, all conspired to erode the empire's strength. The jungle closed in, swallowing stone towers crowned with faces, until they were no longer monuments but memories. To walk through Angkor Wat today is to walk in two worlds at once, one of immense human achievement and one of ghostly quiet, where the forest reclaims what was borrowed. The smile of stone faces, serene and eternal, looks out upon a city that has already passed into night. But it is not only the cities we know that haunt us, there are cities we only imagine. Cities that may never have existed, yet have captured our longing. El Dorado, the golden city, shimmering with wealth beyond measure. Atlantis, an island civilization said to have sunk beneath the waves in a single day and night. Such cities may be legends, but their power lies not in their reality, but in their absence. They are destinations that forever elude us, horizons we chase but never reach. In this sense, they belong to the city of eternal night more deeply than any ruin, for they were born entirely of dream, and it is in the dream that they remain. Every lost city carries the same lesson, whispered in different voices: permanence is an illusion. Human hands build, stones rise, empires flourish, but time is always waiting, and when time arrives, it does not always arrive with fire or destruction. More often, it comes quietly. A trade route shifts, a river changes course, a forest grows, silence spreads where once there was sound. Slowly, inevitably, the city slips into shadow, and yet, as we look upon these ruins, there is beauty. There is something strangely comforting in the persistence of stone, in the way vines curl around columns, in the way sunlight strikes what remains, for even as cities fall into night, they do not vanish entirely. They leave traces, fragments, whispers for us to find. They become mysteries that live not only in the ground, but in us. We carry their stories, tell their names, imagine their lives. Perhaps this is why the idea of the city of eternal night remains powerful. It is not only about loss, but about the persistence of memory within that loss. Standing among ruins, you may feel both small and infinite. Small because you see the fragility of human effort, infinite because you realize you are connected to countless others who have wondered the same things, who have gazed at broken walls and asked, what happened here? Why did it end? Where did they go? These questions have no final answer, they are eternal, and in that way, the ruins are not only cities lost to time, they are doors, opening toward the greater mystery of all things that fade. And so from the broken stones of Babylon, from the carved faces of Petra, from the jungle-wrapped pyramids of the Maya, from the serene towers of Angkor, and from the shimmering myths of Atlantis and El Dorado, we gather a truth: the city of eternal night may not be a single place, but the shadow into which all cities eventually fall. As we leave these ruins behind in our journey, we step deeper into the symbolic night. If the world has known so many cities lost to time, perhaps the myths of eternal darkness were born from their memory. Our next step takes us away from the physical remnants and into the realm of story itself, into the myths of eternal twilight, where cultures imagined realms untouched by day, and where the city of eternal night is more than history, it is legend. When cities fall silent, and roads dissolve into nothing, imagination steps in. Human beings, faced with the mystery of loss, have always turned to stories to explain what cannot be fully understood. It is in this space, between memory and forgetting, between what was and what is gone, that myths of eternal twilight are born. These myths do not describe places we can visit, but realms we can feel, landscapes where the sun does not rise, where shadows are endless, where time itself seems suspended. They are not ruins, yet they carry the same hush of finality. They are cities of the mind, existing beyond maps, yet vivid enough to shape the way entire cultures understood life, death, and what lies beyond. In the frozen imagination of the Norse world, there was Niflheim, the misty land of ice and shadow. It was not the fiery hall of heroes, nor the shining fields of Valhalla, but a place of eternal cold, where souls wandered in a twilight, without warmth or light. It was a land of stillness, the very opposite of the hearth fires that sustained life in the north. To picture Niflheim is to picture the city of eternal night in its starkest form, not as punishment, but as a place where vitality has drained away, where nothing grows, where silence rules. The Norse believed that even the gods could not escape the pull of such darkness, for in the end all worlds were destined to fall into twilight at Ragnarok. The Greeks, too, envisioned a realm beyond day. The underworld, ruled by Hades, was not a fiery inferno, but a kingdom of shadow. The river Styx marked its boundary, a threshold between the living and the dead. Those who crossed were ferried into a land of dim light, where souls lingered in shades. Some found punishment, others found rest, but all shared the same twilight air. Even the heroes who ventured there, Odysseus, Orpheus, Aeneas, described the underworld as hushed, vast and haunting, a realm where the sun's light was nothing more than memory. Here again, we see the echo of the city of eternal night, not destruction, but the absence of dawn, a permanence of dusk. In ancient India and Tibet, stories spoke of realms of shadow as well. The Buddhist cosmology described Naraka, worlds of darkness, where time stretched impossibly long. These were not eternal punishments, but cycles, vast ages of twilight, where beings endured, learning the lessons of impermanence. The Hindu epics, too, imagined great asuras and demons living in cities beneath the earth, shrouded in darkness, yet filled with their own kind of grandeur. Such visions remind us that eternal night was not always seen as despair. It could also be a place of hidden power, a counterbalance to the blazing light of gods and heavens. Even in the Christian imagination, the concept of eternal twilight finds form. Hell, as described in medieval visions, was not always a place of fire. Often it was a place of endless night. Dante's Inferno guides us downward through circles of shadow, where light grows dimmer with each step until the very heart of the abyss is frozen, not burning. The souls there do not burn in sunlight, they linger in darkness, forgotten. For listeners of those tales in candlelit halls, the thought of a world where dawn never came was as terrifying as any torment of flame. But myths of twilight were not confined to punishment. Many cultures also envisioned lands of eternal dusk as places of rest. The Celtic otherworld, for instance, was often described as a land bathed in a light neither day nor night, a place of gentle twilight where time slowed and the dead could dwell in peace. Similarly, some Native American traditions told of lands beneath the earth where the ancestors lived in perpetual dusk, not suffering, but waiting. These stories soften the fear of night, presenting it as a transition, a quiet continuation, rather than an abrupt end. The balance between fear and comfort runs deep in these myths. Eternal night is frightening because it denies renewal. Without dawn, there is no promise of tomorrow. Yet it is also comforting because it offers permanence. No more cycles of labor and loss, no more rise and fall, only stillness, unchanging. Cultures have returned again and again to this image, each shaping it to reflect their hopes and anxieties. The myths differ in detail, but they all converge on the same haunting idea that somewhere beyond life and beyond memory lies a realm where twilight never lifts. What makes these myths so enduring is not only their imagery, but their reflection of human experience. We know the hush of dusk, we know the melancholy beauty of twilight, when the world softens, when colors fade, when the first stars tremble in the sky. Twilight is fleeting in our daily lives, but in myth, it becomes eternal, captured and preserved. These stories take a moment that is naturally transient and imagine what it would mean if it lasted forever. In doing so, they touch something deep in us, the wish to hold on to time, even as it slips away. Think of the way we use twilight in poetry and art. It is a symbol of memory, of things past but not forgotten, of beauty touched by sorrow. Myths of eternal twilight are the grand-scale version of this, entire worlds frozen in that in-between light. The city of eternal night lives in this same space, not total darkness, not blinding light, but an eternal dusk, where clarity fades into shadow and certainty dissolves into possibility. And as these myths whisper to us, they also prepare us for the journeys we will take in our own imagination. For if we believe in realms of twilight, if we tell stories of cities that dwell there, then perhaps we are acknowledging a truth about ourselves, that part of us longs for a place where the rush of day is over, where silence replaces struggle, where mystery remains unsolved. From Niflheim to Hades, from Naraka to the other world, from Dante's frozen abyss to Celtic twilight shores, humanity has woven countless variations of the same vision. Always different, yet always the same, a place where time slows, where light dims, where the horizon is endless and still. These myths do not simply frighten us, they invite us to step into the hush, to let go of certainty, to imagine what lies beyond the edge of light. And so, as we leave the realm of myth behind, we carry with us its shadows. For myths do not exist apart from the world, they shape how we see it. When we descend into caves, when we walk through tunnels, when we enter places where the sun does not reach, the memory of these twilight myths lingers. Our next step then takes us downward into shadow cities built not of story, but of stone, cities hidden beneath our feet, where people once lived in darkness, and where the echoes of eternal night still breathe. To imagine eternal night, we need not look only to myth. We need only look beneath us. For across the world, hidden in rock and soil, lie entire realms where people once lived without sunlight. Shadow cities, subterranean labyrinths, places carved into the earth itself. They are as much refuges as they are prisons, silent reminders that humanity has always carried within it a strange relationship with darkness. In the rolling lands of Cappadocia, in modern-day Turkey, entire underground cities stretch layer upon layer beneath the ground. Derinkuyu, the most famous among them, descends more than 200 feet into the earth. At its height, it is believed to have housed thousands of people. Imagine walking through its narrow tunnels, the ceilings low, the walls hewn from volcanic rock. Rooms branch outward like veins, chapels, kitchens, stables, even wells. Air shafts pierce the rock, bringing breath into the depths. It was not a temporary shelter, but a true city, prepared for siege, for survival, for the persistence of life in shadow. What must it have felt like to live there, to walk each day through corridors that never knew sunlight? The flicker of oil lamps, the sound of footsteps echoing in stone, the constant coolness of air untouched by the seasons. Outside, enemies might rage, or storms might break. But below, there was only the rhythm of life in twilight. To enter such a place today is to feel both wonder and unease, as though the city of eternal night might already exist, not as myth, but as stone chambers beneath our feet. Cappadocia is not alone in its shadows. Across the Mediterranean, in Rome, the catacombs spread like silent rivers of stone. Miles of tunnels hold the resting places of the dead, their walls etched with symbols of faith and hope. In these dim passages, early Christians once gathered in secrecy, whispering prayers, sharing rituals, far from the watchful eyes of empire. The catacombs were not only tombs, but sanctuaries, a world apart, where life and death intermingled in quiet resilience. Walking them today, the air cool and heavy, one feels the weight of time pressing close, the sense that thousands of voices once lingered here in the dark. Further north, in the cities of Eastern Europe, salt mines became underground palaces. In Poland, the Wieluczka salt mine stretches for hundreds of kilometers, its caverns carved over centuries. Within its depths lie chapels, statues, even chandeliers, all sculpted from salt. It is a city of crystal shadow, shimmering faintly under lamps. Here, darkness was not only endured, it was shaped into beauty. The miners transformed their twilight world into a place of awe, proof that even in night, human creativity finds light. But not all subterranean cities were built by human hands. Some were found, ready-made, by nature itself. Caves have always offered shelter, and from the earliest times, people descended into them, seeking safety. In France and Spain, prehistoric paintings still adorn cavern walls, flickering with life when torchlight glances across them. To stand in such a cave is to stand in continuity with the first artists, the first dreamers, who turned darkness into a canvas. Their painted animals seem to move in the half-light, as though night itself had come alive. Yet underground cities carry with them unease, for as much as they protect, they also confine. To live without sunlight is to surrender to a world of shadow. The body loses its sense of time. Morning and evening blur, days stretch into one another like echoes. For those who dwelt in such places, night was no longer a passing state, it was permanent. This permanence gives us a glimpse into what the city of eternal night might feel like. Safe, perhaps, but also endless, a world where light does not return. Legends often grew from such places. In many cultures, caves and tunnels were seen as gateways to the underworld. The Mayans believed that caves were portals to Xibalba, the realm of the dead. In Greece, caves were sacred to Hades and Persephone, thresholds between the living and the shadowed. To descend into the earth was never simply practical, it was spiritual. The deeper one went, the closer one came to mysteries beyond human grasp. Perhaps that is why so many myths of eternal night are tied to underground places. They embody the liminal, the crossing from light into something that resists return. The strangest thing about these shadow cities is how they blur categories. They are not entirely alive, yet not entirely dead, not entirely forgotten, yet not fully remembered. They exist in between, suspended like twilight itself. When you walk through them today, there is a sense of timelessness, as if the world above has changed endlessly, but here, in the dark, nothing has shifted. Lamps can be lit, footsteps can echo, and suddenly you could imagine that you are centuries away, living in the rhythm of those who once called these shadows home. To dwell underground is to surrender to humility. Stone walls do not rise in triumph, they close in, pressing close to the body. Skies do not stretch upward, they vanish, and yet in this humility, there is survival. Civilizations endured precisely because they learned to descend, to find shelter in night. Without such places, many peoples might not have survived war, invasion, or famine. Eternal night may seem terrifying, but in these hidden cities, it was also salvation. And so the shadow cities beneath our feet tell a double story. They remind us of fear, of confinement, of the absence of light, of the uncertainty that comes when horizons are gone. But they also remind us of resilience, of how humans can build life even in the deepest dark. This contrast between fear and comfort, survival and silence, lies at the very heart of our journey toward the city of eternal night. When you leave such a place, when you climb the stairs, ascend the tunnels, and at last see daylight again, there is always a moment of disorientation. The sun feels too bright, the world too loud. For a moment you understand how easily one could become accustomed to night, how easily one could forget the difference between dusk and dawn, and perhaps in that disorientation, you glimpse why myths of eternal night feel so familiar, because in some hidden corner of memory, humanity has already lived them. As we emerge from the shadow cities carved beneath our feet, the next step in our path turns upward, not into darkness, but toward fire. For just as there are eternal shadows, there are eternal flames, flames that burned without ceasing, that promised light forever, yet vanished when their keepers faltered. To understand night fully, we must also understand the fragility of light. If night is the absence of light, then fire has always been our rebellion against it. Since the first sparks were struck from stone, flames have been the companion of human life. They flickered in caves, burned on altars, and glowed in watchtowers. To tend a fire was to hold back the darkness, to make night less absolute. But there were some flames that seemed different, flames that burned without ceasing, flames believed to be eternal. These lights were more than practical, they were sacred, woven into myth, and watched over, as though the fate of entire peoples rested upon their glow. In ancient Greece, the goddess Hestia was the keeper of the sacred flame. Every city had its hearth, every temple its fire. To let it extinguish was unthinkable, a break with the gods themselves. The flame was renewal, life, protection, a thread binding the mortal to the divine. In Rome this duty passed to the Vestal virgins, who guarded the eternal fire within the temple of Vesta. For centuries the flame was never allowed to die. If it faltered, it was seen as a sign of cosmic imbalance, a warning that the order of things was slipping toward chaos. Imagine the pressure, the devotion required to keep watch, not for hours, but for generations, ensuring that a light never dimmed. And yet, even eternal flames vanish. When Rome fell, and the temple was closed, the sacred fire was extinguished. With it ended a continuity that had lasted for 1,000 years. Darkness entered where once there had only been a constant glow. For the people of that time, the silence of the hearth must have felt immense, as though the world itself had grown colder. The flame was no mere symbol, it was the heartbeat of their civilization. To lose it was to feel abandoned by the very gods they had served. Elsewhere, eternal flames burned from the earth itself. In Azerbaijan, natural gas seeps gave rise to burning mountains, fires that blazed without human tending. For millennia, pilgrims came to these sites, marveling at flames that danced endlessly against the night. The temple of Ateshka, built by Zoroastrians, was one such place. Within its stone walls, worshippers honored Attar, the holy fire, believing these flames were fragments of eternity itself. To watch them was to watch the earth breathe fire, to see proof that some lights were not of human making. Yet even these fires eventually failed. When the pressure of the earth shifted, when the veins of gas ran dry, the eternal flames sputtered and died. Their shrines became silent stone, their altars bare. What must it have felt like for the last guardian to stand before a fire that had burned for centuries, only to see it falter? To witness the eternal vanish is to understand that permanence is an illusion. Every light, no matter how enduring, carries within it the seed of its own extinguishing. This paradox of fire, as eternal and yet fragile, threads itself through countless myths. In Zoroastrian belief, fire was the symbol of truth and purity, but always in need of protection. In Hindu traditions, the sacred flame of Agni carried prayers to the gods, yet had to be carefully fed. Even in distant Japan, the eternal fires of shrines burned as long as human devotion remained strong. Across the world, cultures turned to fire as both promise and warning, a symbol of unending light, but one utterly dependent on the hands that kept it alive. Fire also came to represent resistance against night in the most personal of ways. The simple hearth flame inside a home was more than warmth, it was continuity, family, memory. In the long winters of northern lands, fire was not only survival but rhythm, the center of stories and rituals. To wake in the night and see the embers still glowing was reassurance that life was still near, that night had not claimed everything. Without fire, the night is not just dark, it is endless. But there is another side to eternal flame, fear. For to gaze upon something that never dies is to realize how small human lives truly are. An endless light can be unsettling, a reminder of forces beyond comprehension. In some traditions, ghostly fires were omens, will-o'-the-wisps, that lured travelers from their paths into marshes and death. Eternal flame, in this sense, was not a comfort but a lure, something that blurred the boundary between safety and danger. When we think of the city of eternal night, we might imagine it as devoid of light. But perhaps such a city could exist only because of eternal flames, small, carefully tended, defying the endless dark. The contrast of fire and shadow defines how we imagine such places. Eternal night is absolute, but within it might burn pockets of eternal light, fragile sanctuaries, glowing hearts of resistance against the consuming dark. The two cannot exist without each other. What lingers in the memory of these vanished fires is not just their light, but the silence after they are gone. Think of the temple of Vesta, the flame extinguished. Think of Eteshka, its fire reduced to stone. Think of the countless hearths that went cold when families were scattered, villages abandoned, civilizations collapsed. The night that followed these vanishings must have felt heavier than usual, as though it had claimed victory. And yet, out of that silence, humanity always rekindled the flame. The lesson of eternal fire is not that anything lasts forever, but that devotion itself is eternal. The keeping of light, the tending of flame, the refusal to let night reign without challenge, this has been humanity's act of faith across all ages. The fire may die, but hands always reach for new sparks, new embers. In this sense, the city of eternal night is not simply a place of darkness, it is also the memory of countless fires lit against it, each flame fragile, each flame defiant. And so we turn from fire to the deeper mystery it sought to hold back, the darkness of death itself. For just as cities and temples built their hopes around eternal flames, so too did people seek to carry light into the afterlife. The path now leads us into the great tombs of the world, where kings and emperors tried to defy night with monuments of stone and treasures of gold. If flame could not last forever, perhaps memory could. Where flame once guarded the threshold between light and shadow, stone would become the next guardian. For as fire flickered and died, rulers of the ancient world sought a more enduring answer. They carved into earth and raised up monuments, not of wood or spark, but of rock, structures that could outlast generations, weather storms, and defy the slow creep of night. If darkness was inevitable, they believed, memory might outshine it. And so they built tombs, vast and solemn, each a fortress against the eternal night of death. The pyramids of Egypt stand foremost among these guardians, rising from the desert sands like mountains forged by human will. They were not simply graves, but gateways. For the pharaoh's death was not an end, but a passage, and the pyramid was the vessel to carry them into the afterlife. Its geometry pointed heavenward, its chambers lined with texts meant to guide the king through the perils of night. Within the cool silence of these stone corridors, torches once flickered against walls inscribed with stars, gods, and journeys across a shadowed underworld. Here the pharaoh sought to bring light into realms unseen, to pass through darkness not as a victim, but as a ruler eternal. Other lands echoed this defiance of night. In China, the first emperor Qin Shi Huang commanded the creation of a mausoleum so vast that legend says rivers of mercury flowed within its hidden chambers, reflecting the eternal heavens underground. Around him, the terracotta army stood in silent ranks, guardians against whatever shadows might rise in the world beyond. These clay soldiers were not mere art, they were an unyielding army meant to follow their king into the deepest night, to ensure his rule endured in realms where human eyes could not wander. In Mesopotamia, the ziggurats rose as steps to the gods, but beneath them lay crypts where kings sought communion with eternity. In the tombs of treasures glittered beside the dead, as though gold could shine against the consuming dark. Harps, ornaments, and sacrificed retainers filled these chambers, each object a light of devotion, each life offered to secure the king's passage into what lay beyond. To enter these tombs was to step into a silence that felt unending, a silence heavy with the belief that life, though fragile, could be purchased in fragments of eternity. And in the Andes, the Inca built their own sacred resting places high in the mountains, where bodies were preserved in cold stone chambers or offered to the peaks themselves. The thin air, the sweeping night sky, the endless stars, all became part of their passage into a city beyond death. These were not graves, but thresholds, each body an emissary, carrying prayers upward to gods who ruled from the heights. Night here was not only darkness, but closeness to the infinite. What unites these tombs is not their architecture, nor the treasures they hold, but the yearning they reveal. Each ruler, each civilization, faced the same truth: the night of death is unrelenting. Yet none could accept it without resistance. Fire might falter, but stone might endure, a flame might be extinguished, but a pyramid could stand for millennia. In these structures, the human refusal to vanish is etched into stone itself, yet even stone erodes. The great tombs were plundered, their treasures scattered, their guardians broken, the eternal light of kings dimmed under the weight of time. The Great Pyramid still towers above the desert, but the pharaohs within were robbed centuries ago. Qin Shi Huang's chamber, sealed with its rivers of mercury, remains unopened, but even there, the night slowly encroaches, seeping through soil and silence. The terracotta warriors still stand, but their paint has faded, their brightness lost to air. Eternity, it seems, is never complete, and so the tombs that were built to deny night now serve as its monuments. Visitors walk their corridors in hushed tones, sensing both presence and absence, grandeur and emptiness. The treasures that remain glitter faintly in the dim museum lights, not as victories over death, but as reminders of how fiercely humans tried to resist it. The Night Kings built their cities of stone, but the true city of eternal night swallowed them still. Perhaps this is the greater mystery, not that rulers believed they could escape death, but that their defiance continues to inspire awe long after their flames have gone out. We stand before their tombs, not as subjects, but as witnesses. We feel the hush of stone, the weight of shadow, the echo of prayers whispered to gods we no longer worship. Something in us recognizes their struggle, their longing, their refusal to yield, for within every human heart lies the same question: how do we face the eternal night? The tombs do not give answers, They only deepen the mystery. They show us that kings with all their armies and wealth feared the same darkness that we do. They reached for immortality and touched only silence, and yet their silence speaks. It tells us that to build against night, even knowing it cannot be conquered, is itself a form of victory. The tomb is both defeat and triumph. Defeat because the king is gone, triumph because the memory endures. As we leave these tombs in thought, we return to the night sky above them. For while stone endures on earth, it is the stars that watch eternally from above. The pharaohs aligned their pyramids with constellations, the Chinese emperor with the pole star, the Inca with the Milky Way. Each sought to anchor their memory not only in stone, but in the heavens themselves. Perhaps the city of eternal night is not below us, but above, written in stars that never cease to shine. From tombs and stone, our path leads onward. If kings could not escape night, perhaps priests and mystics could. For where rulers sought permanence in monuments, others turned to the unseen, to rituals, visions, and sacred journeys that claim to pierce the veil of darkness itself. And so from the tombs of kings, we move now into the secret rites of those who claim to walk within the eternal night and return with wisdom. If tombs were monuments of stone, meant to guard the body, rituals were living bridges, meant to guard the soul. Where kings built pyramids and mausoleums, priests built pathways in time, ceremonies, chants, and offerings, designed to carry the living and the dead alike through the darkness of existence. For in every land, the human spirit turned not only to stone, but to rhythm, flame, and word. Rituals sought to tame the eternal night, not by building against it, but by stepping within it, inviting it to speak, and daring to listen. The ancient Egyptians spoke of the Book of the Dead, not as scripture for the living, but as a manual for the soul, as it traveled through shadow. In hushed chambers, priests recited incantations beside the sarcophagus, guiding the departed across the perilous hours of the underworld. Each spell was a lantern in the dark, each word a torch against the endless night. The sun god Rada himself was believed to journey through 12 gates of darkness each evening, fighting serpents and demons before rising again at dawn. The ritual, then, was not only for kings, but for the cosmos itself, a reminder that night could be endured, and that even within shadow, the promise of dawn was hidden. Far to the north, where winters brought nights that stretched for weeks, the Norse peoples performed their own midnight rites. Fires were lit against the snow, mead was poured into the earth, and chants rose into the icy dark. For them night was both terror and blessing, a time of rest, yes, but also of spirits that moved unseen across the frozen land. Yule fires burned as a plea to the returning sun, and stories of gods and giants echoed into the long starless evenings. These rituals were not only survival, but communion, an acknowledgement that darkness was not an enemy to be destroyed, but a force to be endured together. The Greeks and Romans, too, embraced the mysteries of night through secret initiations. In Eleusis, initiates of the cult of Demeter and Persephone descended into darkened halls where torches flickered and sacred words were whispered. They reenacted the myth of a goddess taken into the underworld and returned, learning in shadows that death itself might be followed by rebirth. To enter such a rite was to step symbolically into the eternal night, and to emerge transformed, carrying with them not certainty, but trust that even in the deepest darkness, life had not ended, but changed. Across the great oceans, the shamans of the Americas held night as a realm of vision. Guided by drums, smoke, and sacred herbs, they entered trances beneath the moon. For them the eternal night was not a place of fear, but of knowledge. Spirits, ancestors, and gods spoke in dreams and visions, offering guidance for the living. The darkness of night became a canvas upon which wisdom was painted. To ordinary eyes, the stars were distant points of light. To the shaman, they were voices, maps, and gates to other worlds. And in the frozen Arctic, where the midnight sun lingered in strange cycles of light and dark, Inuit developed rituals to honor the shifting balance of night. The auroras, dancing above, were seen as spirits, their movements carrying messages. Ritual chants and offerings were made not to banish night, but to maintain harmony with it, to respect its presence as a necessary counterpart to day. For them, eternal night was not simply absence of light, it was an essential part of the world's heartbeat. These rituals shared a truth the tombs could not: that night is not only external, but internal. It lives not just in the heavens, or in the earth, but within us, in grief, in silence, in the moments when we face what cannot be named. Rituals gave structure to that mystery, allowed communities to face it together. The flicker of flame in a temple, the drumbeat under the stars, the chant that echoes into the cold, each act was a reminder that while the eternal night could not be stopped, it could be entered with courage. But as with tombs, rituals faced their own fragility. Words were forgotten, sacred fires extinguished, ceremonies outlawed or suppressed. The rites of Eleusis, once central to Greek spiritual life, vanished into history, their secrets lost. The songs of shamans, once carried by memory, faded as cultures were silenced or absorbed. Night swallowed these rituals as surely as it swallowed kings. Yet traces remain: inscriptions, fragments of text, echoes in folklore, whispers that remind us of what was once believed, what was once done in the quiet hours of darkness. And perhaps, in a way, these remnants are enough. For though the precise steps of the dance are lost, the impulse remains. We still gather at midnight vigils, light candles in remembrance, whisper prayers when the world feels silent. We still look to the stars for guidance, still speak to the unseen when grief grows too heavy. The eternal night is no less daunting now than it was millennia ago, and the rituals of the past still live within us, in altered forms, in quiet gestures. What makes these rites so haunting is not only their mystery, but their universality. From Egypt to Scandinavia, from the Andes to the Arctic, people confronted the night not only with stone, but with song. They did not merely build against it, they invited it into their myths, their ceremonies, their lives. Night was not the opposite of life, but a part of it, woven into its rhythm. To walk the path to the city of eternal night was not always to resist, but to accept, to bow one's head in respect, and step carefully into the shadow. Yet even within this acceptance, there was always hope. For every ritual of mourning, there was a song of rebirth. For every chant into silence, there was a torch raised against the dark. Rituals never sought only to surrender, they sought to balance. They taught that within night, there could be vision, wisdom, renewal. They taught that the eternal night was not merely an ending, but a place of transformation. As we close this chapter of rituals, the fire still flickers in our mind's eye, the chants still echo faintly, carried by time. The eternal night still waits, silent and vast. And yet humanity's response is not only fear, but reverence. Rituals remind us that in the deepest shadow, meaning can still be found. From here, our path turns again. We leave behind the living voices of ritual, and return once more to the silent landscape, the places where entire civilizations vanished, leaving behind only whispers. If the tombs and the rituals gave structure to the night, the ruins of lost cities show us how night claims even the mightiest dreams. And so our journey carries us forward, to the abandoned streets, the broken walls, and the hushed stones of cities swallowed by darkness. If rituals gave voice to the eternal night, then cities offered it silence. For when a city falls, it does not merely collapse in stone and timber, it dissolves into shadow, into the silence of absence. Streets that once rang with footsteps grow still, markets once alive with voices become empty courtyards, where only the wind lingers. It is here, in the ruins of vanished cities, that the eternal night finds its most haunting expression. History is filled with names, once spoken with pride, now whispered with mystery. The Mayan city of Tikal, deep within the Guatemalan jungle, once glittered with temples that pierced the canopy. Its plazas were filled with processions, its palaces with rulers who believed themselves chosen by gods. And then, one day, the voices fell silent. The jungle grew thick around it, as if the earth itself sought to cover what had been forgotten. For centuries, it lay buried, a phantom city hidden within green shadows, a testament to how swiftly human light can be devoured by night. Pompeii, too, stands frozen in its final hour. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE did not allow for slow decline. It buried the city in ash within hours. Yet, in that instant of destruction, a strange preservation occurred. Streets, houses, even bread left in ovens, remained encased in stone. When uncovered centuries later, Pompeii emerged not as a ruin but as a captured moment, a city in the act of vanishing. Its silence is unsettling, not because it is empty, but because it is still so vivid, as though life is waiting to resume, yet never will. Then there is Machu Picchu, the Inca citadel perched upon the Andean heights. For reasons still debated, disease, conquest, or choice, it was abandoned, left to the embrace of the mountains. Cloaked in clouds, veiled in mist, it became a ghost city in the sky. To wander its terraces today is to feel the presence of absence, voices lost to the wind, prayers dissolved into stone. It is a city where the eternal night feels almost physical, pressing in from the cliffs and valleys that surround it. The Mesopotamian city of Ur, once the jewel of Sumer, now lies as a scattering of ziggurat ruins. Here, the first great urban dreams took shape, writing, trade, law, all born among its bricks. Yet time reduced it to fragments, its once mighty walls now shadows against desert sands. Where thousands once thrived, silence reigns. The eternal night crept not suddenly, but slowly, a gradual dimming until the city's flame was no more than a faint ember, remembered in texts. Each of these cities tells a story of night, sometimes violent and sudden, sometimes gradual and unseen. Yet the pattern is the same. What was once filled with light and movement now stands in stillness. The eternal night does not only come for kings in tombs or souls in ritual, it comes for entire civilizations. What makes the vanished cities so powerful is not only their silence, but their lingering presence. They remind us that night does not erase, it conceals. Beneath jungle vines, under volcanic ash, within mountain mists, the outlines of life remain. And when uncovered, they feel like dreams half remembered, familiar, yet unreachable. The eternal night allows us glimpses, but never the whole. The laughter of Pompeii's streets, the prayers of Machu Picchu's priests, the markets of Ur, all are lost, and yet in their ruins, they still whisper. There is another layer of mystery here, why some cities vanish without clear explanation. Consider the ancestral Puebloan settlements of Chaco Canyon. Their great houses and ceremonial kivas once echoed with life, but then, in the 12th century, they were abandoned. Was it drought, conflict, a spiritual migration? The answer is unknown. The night in this case does not merely silence, it refuses explanation. We are left only with empty structures aligned with the stars, speaking to a purpose that remains obscure. Or the city of Mohenjo-Daro, part of the Indus Valley civilization. Streets laid out with precision, drainage systems ahead of their time, a people organized and thriving, and then an end without record. Was it invasion, disease, or climate that extinguished their flame? The city remains, but the story does not. The eternal night not only erased its life, but its memory. We gaze at its streets like readers holding a book with missing pages. The vanished cities remind us of the fragile line between light and shadow, between memory and forgetting. We who dwell in bustling cities today may imagine permanence, yet the ruins scattered across the earth whisper otherwise. Permanence is an illusion. The eternal night waits patiently for years or centuries until silence replaces sound, and yet these places also hold a strange beauty. In Tikal, the jungle's reclaiming makes it not only a ruin, but a living monument. In Pompeii, tragedy becomes preservation, a paradox of destruction that allowed memory to remain. In Machu Picchu, clouds turn abandonment into mysticism, making absence feel like sacred presence. The eternal night may claim, but it also transforms. It gives these cities a quality they never had in life, a haunting aura, a sense of timelessness. To walk through a vanished city is to feel both awe and sorrow, awe at what was once achieved, sorrow at what was lost. One hears the silence not as emptiness, but as echo, the faint resonance of lives that once were. It is in these echoes that the eternal night speaks most clearly, not in loud proclamation, but in quiet reminder that all things, no matter how great, must one day fade. And so, we leave the ruins behind. We have seen tombs, rituals, and cities, all ways humanity faced the eternal night, and all ultimately claimed by it. But our journey does not end here, for if night silences, it also inspires. From vanished cities rose legends, myths, and sacred tales, stories woven to explain why the light dimmed and what might still live in the dark. These myths became more than memory, they became maps of meaning, guiding generations who walked the same uncertain path. And thus, our path now turns towards story itself, to the legends whispered in the ruins, to the tales that echo through the eternal night, half history and half dream. Where ruins end, legends begin. Stones may crumble, but stories endure, and in the vast silence, left by vanished cities, humanity filled the emptiness with narrative, whispers of gods and spirits, of cursed lands and eternal nights. These tales are not merely entertainment, they are the echoes of fear and wonder, the mind's attempt to give shape to what cannot be seen. To enter the shadowed realm of legend is to step into a world where fact and mystery weave together until neither can be pulled apart. Every culture has such stories, born in the places where the light of certainty grows dim. In the ancient Greek imagination, beyond the horizon lay Hades, a realm wrapped in endless night where the dead wandered among shades. Here rivers like Lethe promised forgetfulness, and shadows moved in a twilight without end. For the Greeks, the shadowed realm was not simply myth, it was geography of the soul, a map of where night began. To recite these stories was to prepare oneself for a journey into that darkness. In Norse tradition, the shadowed realm took a different shape. Hell, a cold and mist-filled land beneath the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree. Here warriors, who did not die gloriously in battle, were said to dwell. Unlike the feasting halls of Valhalla, Hell was a place of stillness, of shadows, of endless waiting. Yet even here, legend granted a kind of dignity. To imagine this realm was to acknowledge the night, not as annihilation, but as another form of being. Travel eastward, and one finds the Japanese tale of Yomi, the land of the dead, a place of perpetual dusk. Once entered, it could not be escaped. In the Kojiki, Japan's oldest chronicle, the goddess Izanami descends into Yomi after death. When her husband, Izanagi, attempts to bring her back, he finds her transformed, her body decayed, her face hidden in shadows. Horrified, he flees, sealing the boundary between life and death forever. Here the shadowed realm is not only a place, but a reminder, some doors once opened, can never be crossed again. Among the indigenous peoples of the Americas, too, the eternal night found its voice in story. The Maya spoke of Xibalba, the underworld ruled by gods of death and disease. It was a realm of trials, where souls faced rivers of blood and darkness, houses filled with bats, knives and cold. Yet in these tales, night was not purely a prison, it was a path of testing, where endurance and courage determined one's fate. The shadowed realm was dangerous, but it was also transformative. In ancient Mesopotamia, one of humanity's earliest civilizations, the descent of Inanna into the underworld was sung in hymns. Stripped of her garments and power, she entered the land of no return, where dust was food and clay was meat. There, she faced her sister, the queen of the underworld. For 3 days, she remained in silence until she was released, reborn with knowledge no living being could hold. Inanna's journey became a blueprint for mythic descent, an acknowledgement that the eternal night was not just an end, but a passage. What unites these legends, despite distance and culture, is the recognition of a border, the threshold where light yields to dark, where the living cannot see, and so imagination must take over. They describe rivers, doors, mists and gates, all symbols of transition. To speak of these places was not only to frighten, but to comfort. If night is inevitable, then at least it has shape, meaning, perhaps even purpose. But legends do more than explain the unknown, they give the night a voice. In Celtic traditions, the festival of Samhain marked the time when the boundary between worlds grew thin. On such nights, spirits could cross over, bringing both blessings and mischief. This belief transformed darkness into a season of story, a night alive with unseen presences. To gather around fires and tell tales was to acknowledge the shadowed realm, not with fear alone, but with reverence. The idea of the eternal night also became tied to places, landscapes where myth rooted itself. Deep caves, where no light penetrated, became imagined entrances to the underworld. Volcanoes spewing fire and ash were thought to be gateways to infernal domains. Vast oceans, stretching into uncharted horizons, were seen as borders of the known world, beyond which lay darkness, monsters, and gods. The shadowed realm was never entirely elsewhere, it touched the edges of the familiar, reminding humanity that mystery was always near. And yet, there is another dimension to these legends. They are mirrors of the human mind. The shadowed realms are not only places of the dead, but landscapes of fear, memory, and longing. To imagine Hades, Yomi, or Xibalba is also to confront inner shadows, the awareness of mortality, the pull of oblivion, the longing for continuity beyond life. Myths externalize these feelings, allowing them to be faced, not in silence, but in story. Even today, these legends linger, they echo in literature, in cinema, in art. The underworld continues to inspire, because it speaks to something timeless, the recognition that the eternal night is both terrifying and strangely beautiful. It is an ending, yes, but also a threshold. Myths grant it structure, turning the unknown into a journey, the silence into narrative, the night into a realm. As we listen to these stories, we find ourselves suspended between history and dream. They are not mere fictions, nor are they literal truths. They are bridges, expressions of how people long ago gazed into the same darkness we face today and tried to understand. Through them, we glimpse the universality of human thought across oceans and centuries, all seeking to make peace with the night. And so our journey continues. We have walked through tombs, rituals, cities, and now myths, each step bringing us deeper into the meaning of the eternal night. But before us lies a new horizon, not only the legends of others, but the visions of seers, poets, and mystics, who claim to have glimpsed what lies within the shadows. Their voices did not merely repeat stories, they sought to describe what they themselves had seen. And so we now turn to them, to those who dared not only to imagine the eternal night, but to walk its path. Legends are the voices of cultures, passed from one generation to the next. But there have always been those who refuse to settle for inherited stories. The mystics, the visionaries, the seers, these are the ones who claimed to have entered the shadowed realm themselves, not through myth or ritual, but through direct experience. Their words are not tales told by others, but testimonies, attempts to describe what cannot be described. And in their visions, the eternal night took on shapes that both terrified and comforted. In ancient Greece, it was not only poets who spoke of Hades, but initiates of the Eleusinian mysteries. These secret rites, dedicated to Demeter and Persephone, promised a glimpse beyond the veil. Those who participated claimed to shed their fear of death, to see in ritual and vision what awaited them in the eternal night. Though details were carefully guarded, fragments remain, descriptions of great lights, of journeys through darkness, of transformations that left the soul forever changed. In these ceremonies, the eternal night was not finality, but passage, a threshold into deeper life. Christian mystics, too, sought to enter the night. Saint John of the Cross wrote of the dark night of the soul, a stage where the self feels abandoned, where light withdraws, and only emptiness remains. But for John, this darkness was not despair. It was purification, a stripping away of all illusions, so that union with the divine might follow. His night was eternal, only in appearance. In truth, it was the gateway to dawn. Such writings turned the eternal night into a paradox, both terrifying absence and holy presence. In the Sufi tradition of the Islamic world, mystics like Rumi and al-Ghazali spoke of nights filled not with terror, but with longing. Rumi described the soul as a moth circling the flame, drawn toward annihilation in the beloved. To lose oneself in that divine night was to gain everything. Al-Ghazali, in his journey from doubt to faith, spoke of a darkness of the mind, a void where certainty collapses, yet from that void emerged vision, clarity, a deeper light. Here, the eternal night was not death, but surrender, the dissolution of self into something vast and infinite. The Jewish mystics, the Kabbalists, envisioned the cosmos as flowing from divine light, but also containing pockets of shadow, hidden vessels, broken fragments, where holiness was concealed. To them, entering the night was a task, to find sparks of light buried in darkness, and lift them upward. Their writings blur the line between mysticism and myth, turning the eternal night into a landscape of symbols, trees of life, spheres of being, shadows that conceal as much as they reveal. In the East, Buddhist monks and Hindu sages alike described states of meditation where the world dissolved into stillness, into emptiness, into what they sometimes called the void. For some, this was liberation, nirvana, the extinguishing of the flame of suffering. For others, it was terrifying, a brush with the eternal night of non-existence. Yet the paradox remained in embracing emptiness, one discovered fullness. The eternal night was no annihilation, but release. Shamans across cultures also walked this path. Through trance, song and sacred plants, they claimed to journey into other worlds, often descending into shadowed realms to retrieve lost souls or knowledge. For them, night was not metaphor, but terrain, populated by spirits, ancestors, and powers beyond comprehension. Their visions were not only personal, but communal, shaping the way entire societies understood death, disease, and destiny. What unites all these mystics is the conviction that the eternal night can be entered here and now, not only after death, but in states of deep prayer, trance, or vision. Their testimonies share remarkable similarities: journeys through darkness, encounters with silence, moments where self dissolves into something vast. Whether framed as God, the void, the beloved, or the underworld, the experience of the eternal night is marked by awe. Yet there is also danger. For every visionary who returned with words of beauty, there are tales of others lost in madness, their minds overwhelmed by what they had seen. The eternal night does not reveal itself gently, it is too vast, too incomprehensible. Mystics often warn that only through preparation, through discipline, humility, and surrender, can one survive such encounters. The night both gives and takes, both awakens and destroys, and so, their writings often carry a double tone, one of ecstasy, but also of warning. To step into the eternal night is to risk everything, but to refuse is to live in fear of it forever. The mystic's courage lies in walking the path others dare not tread, and in returning with words that can never fully capture the truth. These testimonies leave us with questions that still resonate today. Were these visions glimpses of another reality, or only the workings of the human mind under extraordinary conditions? Were they journeys into the eternal night itself, or metaphors for inner transformation? Perhaps both. Perhaps the boundary between inner and outer, imagination and reality, is thinner than we think. What matters is that these visionaries kept alive the sense that the eternal night is not only a destination beyond death, but a mystery woven into the fabric of life. It is present in silence, in dreams, in moments of loss and surrender, in the vastness that sometimes opens within the human heart. And as their voices echo across time, we find ourselves drawn deeper still. If myths gave shape to the night, and mystics gave testimony to its presence, what happens when memory itself collective, historical, cultural, begins to blur with darkness. What of the times when civilizations themselves descend into night, leaving only fragments behind? It is there in the silence of memory that the eternal night reveals yet another face. There are moments when the eternal night does not appear as myth or vision, but as silence itself. Silence, not of still evenings or of hushed temples, but of memory lost, eras forgotten, names erased, civilizations dissolved into shadows. The eternal night does not always wait beyond death. Sometimes it descends upon history itself. Walk among the ruins of ancient cities, and you will feel this silence. Stones weathered by centuries stand like broken sentences, fragments of stories no one remembers how to read. Who walked these streets? Who carved these temples? What voices echoed in the halls that now lie in dust? The eternal night lingers here, not as punishment, but as obscurity. Civilizations once vibrant with life, and now reduced to whispers that few can even attempt to decipher. The Sumerians, among the first builders of cities, invented writing itself, yet so much of their literature lies buried in broken tablets, incomplete, unread. We know glimpses, the Epic of Gilgamesh, hymns to gods whose names few now speak, but how many stories have dissolved entirely? Whole epics may have vanished, absorbed into the silence. To imagine them is to touch the edge of the eternal night, where memory falters. The Indus Valley civilization, flourishing with its planned cities, great baths, and undeciphered script, stands as another testament to forgottenness. Their script, carved into seals and pottery, still resists translation. Without words, their voices remain silent. We see their designs, their patterns, their architecture, yet we do not know their names, their myths, their fears, their dreams. The eternal night covers them like a shroud, leaving only shadows for us to grasp at, even closer to our own time. The night consumes. Think of the libraries burned, the Library of Alexandria, the House of Wisdom in Baghdad. Within their flames vanished entire worlds of thought, books lost not only to time, but to deliberate destruction. Knowledge erased, not by nature, but by human hands. In such loss, silence grows heavy, for we sense what might have been, discoveries that could have altered the course of history, philosophies that could have reshaped civilizations, stories that might have transformed our understanding of ourselves. The silence of forgotten memories is not limited to books and ruins. It dwells in personal lives, in the countless names never written down, the countless stories never told. For every king or queen, recorded in annals, there are millions who lived and died, whose existence is now swallowed by time. Their laughter, their grief, their love, all disappeared into the eternal night, leaving no trace. Humanity is not only built upon what is remembered, but haunted by what is not. And yet, silence is not entirely absence. It has texture, weight, suggestion. The ruins still speak, though faintly. The fragments of broken inscriptions hint at larger wholes. Archaeologists, historians, dreamers, all attempt to listen, to draw meaning from silence. Sometimes a single shard of pottery, a single line of text, can illuminate an entire world. In this way, memory resists the night, even if only in flickers, but there is humility in recognizing that most will remain beyond recovery. The eternal night of forgetting reminds us of limits, of fragility. Just as each human life is brief, so too are civilizations, libraries, languages. Nothing endures forever, not in body, not in word, not even in stone. Time itself is the slowest flood, wearing everything down, carrying it into obscurity. Still, silence is not always tragic. There is a strange beauty in what cannot be fully known. Mystery invites wonder. The ruins of forgotten cities call to us precisely because we do not know all their stories. The silence leaves space for imagination, for awe, for humility, before the vastness of time. The eternal night of memory does not simply erase, it transforms absence into presence, emptiness into invitation. In this way, the silence of forgotten memories mirrors the mystics' visions, where they spoke of darkness that purifies. History offers darkness that humbles. We are reminded that the world is larger than what we know, that human existence is not a line of progress, but a fragile dance, always at risk of vanishing into the night. And yet amid this humility, a question stirs: if so much has already been lost, how much more will fade? What of our present age, our words, our cities, our names? Will they too dissolve into silence, leaving only fragments behind? To imagine this is to glimpse our place within the same eternal cycle, where memory becomes shadow, and silence speaks louder than words. It is this recognition that guides us to the next reflection. If myths gave the eternal night form, and mystics gave it vision, and history revealed its silence, what then of those who resist forgetting, those who turn loss itself into creation, who embrace darkness and weave from it art, poetry, and story? For the eternal night, though it erases, also inspires. From silence comes song, from shadow comes imagination, and so, we move from memory into creation, where silence swallows memory. Art and literature rise to resist it. They do not deny the presence of the eternal night. Instead, they give it form, voice, and vision. In every age, poets, painters, and storytellers have reached into darkness. The eternal night, once feared as an abyss, becomes, through art, a mirror of the soul. In the ancient world, myths were the earliest forms of art. They painted the night, not with colors on canvas, but with words that lived in memory. The Greek poets spoke of Nyx, the goddess of night, whose offspring included doom, sleep, and death. She was not merely shadow, but the womb of existence, both feared and revered. Hesiod described her as the mother of cosmic forces, silence, destiny, even the fates themselves. Already, the eternal night was recognized as more than absence. It was a source of creation. In Mesopotamia, literature imagined the descent into the underworld as a journey into perpetual shadow. The goddess Inanna's descent into the land of the dead painted the eternal night as a place of power, transformation, and stillness. The scribes, by writing her tale, gave darkness the shape of ritual and drama. Across cultures, the pen became the torch that illuminated the night, even while acknowledging its depth. As centuries turned, the eternal night entered Western literature more consciously. In Dante's Inferno, the poet guides us through circles of darkness, where shadow is not only punishment, but reflection of the human condition. Darkness is structured, purposeful, rich with imagery. Each canto becomes a meditation on what lies hidden beneath light. The eternal night reimagined as an inner landscape. In the Romantic era, darkness moved closer to the heart. Poets like Lord Byron, Percy Shelley, and John Keats found in night both terror and beauty. Night became the time of visions, of forbidden dreams, of melancholy reflection. Keats, in his Ode to a Nightingale, turns night into a song of longing, where mortality dissolves into the eternal hush of darkness. The Romantics embraced night not as end, but as depth, a space where imagination thrived. Painters, too, found in night their canvas of infinity. Look to Francisco Goya, whose black paintings drip with terror, shadows swallowing faces and landscapes alike. In these works, night is madness, despair, and the edge of sanity. Contrast this with Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night, where night glows with whirling energy, a cosmos alive with motion. Both artists painted the eternal night, but one as abyss, the other as luminous mystery. Between them, we see how the same darkness can birth utterly different visions. The eternal night also crept into the Gothic imagination. Writers like Mary Shelley and Bram Stoker clothed it in haunted castles, in restless creatures, in storms that echoed human fear. The Gothic tradition recognized night as the stage where humanity confronts its most hidden desires and terrors. Frankenstein's monster wanders the icy night of rejection, while Dracula emerges only under its cover. In such stories, the eternal night is both setting and character, an atmosphere that embodies what cannot be spoken in daylight. Beyond the Gothic, modern literature too has woven the eternal night. In the works of Kafka, night becomes existential, a symbol of alienation and the unseen powers that govern life. In T.S. Eliot's The Waste Land, night descends not only on the landscape, but on spirit, creating an eternal twilight of despair. Meanwhile, in the words of Rainer Maria Rilke, night is sacred, a place where angels dwell, where silence is prayer. Each author bends the eternal night into new meanings, yet always returns to its central mystery, that in shadow lies truth unseen. But art does not only depict the eternal night, it converses with it. Musicians across centuries have scored it into symphonies and songs. From the deep organ chords of Bach, that echo like midnight in cathedrals, to Chopin's nocturnes, that whisper melancholy into the silence, music finds in night both comfort and infinite expanse. Each note is a flicker in shadow, a way to shape the vast silence into meaning. Even cinema, the modern art of light and shadow, thrives in its interplay with night. Film noir drenches its characters in shadow, where truth is elusive and morality blurred. Science fiction films, like 2001, A Space Odyssey, show night not only on Earth, but in the infinite cosmos, where silence and mystery dominate. In cinema's gaze, the eternal night becomes both the unknown beyond and the unknown within. Through all these forms, a pattern emerges. Art turns fear into fascination. It allows humanity to sit within darkness without despair. Instead of resisting the eternal night, art opens the possibility of embracing it, of transforming absence into presence, silence into music, shadow into color. In this, artists act as guides, leading us not out of the night, but deeper into it, where meaning is found precisely because it cannot be fully explained. What is most striking is how universal this impulse is. Across cultures, across centuries, humans have sought not to banish night, but to honor it. Whether in sacred hymns, painted skies, tragic novels, or whispered poems, the eternal night becomes a shared language of awe. It reminds us that mystery is not failure of knowledge, but a condition of existence. To live is to dwell both in light and in night, and art shows us how to see beauty in both. As we move onward, we begin to see how the eternal night does not remain only in myth, mysticism, memory, or art. It extends further into science itself, into the study of the cosmos and of time. For the universe, in its vastness, is perhaps the truest embodiment of this eternal night. Stars are but brief fires scattered in infinite shadow, and so, to continue our journey, we step from painted skies and poetic words into the silence of the cosmos, where the eternal night stretches without end. Above every city, above every desert, above every ocean, the night has always stretched, as a vast and mysterious veil. It is not merely the absence of sunlight, but the face of the cosmos itself. When ancient people lifted their eyes to the heavens, they did not see nothingness. They saw infinity, an ocean of shadows scattered with tiny fires, each one whispering of distances beyond comprehension. In that sight, humanity first recognized that the eternal night was not confined to myth or story. It was real, and it was endless. The cosmos itself is defined by night. For every star we see, there are billions hidden in darkness, too faint or too distant to reach our gaze. Between them lies silence, space so vast that even light requires millions of years to cross it. Astronomers often remind us, the universe is not a place of light, but a realm of shadow, with brief sparks of brilliance. Night is not the exception, it is the rule. Light exists only as fleeting punctuation within a greater darkness. Long before telescopes revealed distant galaxies, early cultures treated the night sky as sacred scripture. To the Egyptians, the goddess Nut stretched across the heavens, her body sparkling with stars. She swallowed the sun each evening, and gave birth to it again, each dawn, making night a womb, as well as a tomb. To the Polynesian navigators, stars were guides across oceanic night, turning emptiness into maps of survival. To the Maya, constellations were clocks of time, their rise and fall dictating harvest and ritual. In every tradition, the eternal night was not merely fear, it was studied, revered, and trusted. When Galileo first raised his telescope, he shattered the illusion of night as a simple backdrop. The blackness swarmed with unseen worlds. The Milky Way, once thought a cloudy streak, resolved into uncountable stars. Darkness, he discovered, was not empty at all, it was alive with hidden fire. The eternal night grew larger, more mysterious, and paradoxically more real. Humanity's place shrank in the immensity, yet curiosity grew stronger. Modern science deepened the mystery further. When astronomers looked deeper into space, they saw not only stars, but entire galaxies, clusters of light adrift in oceans of dark, and beyond them, even more darkness. The cosmos is expanding, stretching night further and further outward. What lies at its edges is unknowable, perhaps unreachable. We live within an island of light, surrounded by eternal night without boundary. Then came one of the greatest riddles. If the universe is infinite and filled with stars, why is the night sky dark? This puzzle, known as Olbers' paradox, haunted scientists for centuries. If infinite stars shine, should not the sky blaze with light? The answer lies in time and distance. The cosmos has not existed forever. Light from distant stars has not yet reached us. The night we see is not emptiness, but the shadow of a universe still unfolding, light still traveling, stories still on their way. Deeper still, we learned of dark matter and dark energy, forces unseen, yet shaping everything. They are not metaphors, but measurable realities, invisible to the eye, known only through their effects. Dark matter binds galaxies together, while dark energy drives them apart. Together, they make up most of the universe, yet we cannot see them. The cosmos itself is built on a foundation of mystery. The eternal night is not a poetic idea, it is the very fabric of reality. And then there are black holes, those most terrifying manifestations of night, born from collapsed stars. They consume all light, all time, all space that crosses their threshold. Around them, even the laws of physics bend. To stand before a black hole is to gaze into eternity, into an abyss where no sound, no signal, no memory escapes. Yet even here, paradoxes shine. Scientists discovered that black holes are not silent forever, they radiate faint whispers, a phenomenon known as Hawking radiation. Even the darkest night speaks, though in a voice almost beyond hearing. For astronauts, the eternal night of space is not theory, but lived experience. Beyond the fragile shell of Earth's atmosphere, they float in silence, surrounded by an abyss that stretches in every direction. Yet even in that infinite darkness, they describe a sense of profound awe. The Earth itself glows as a small sphere of color, fragile and fleeting against the black canvas of the cosmos. From orbit, night is not frightening, it is humbling. A reminder that all human history unfolds upon a tiny island of light adrift in an endless sea. The eternal night of the cosmos also speaks of time. Starlight that reaches us tonight may have begun its journey before humans walked the earth. To gaze into the night sky is to gaze into the past, to witness history written in light. Some of the stars we see no longer exist. They are ghosts, their radiance outliving their lives. Thus, night becomes not only space, but memory, a living archive of creation itself. For all its immensity, the eternal night does not erase us, it situates us. Our stories, our myths, our arts are small lights flickering against it, no less real for their fragility. Perhaps it is because of this contrast that we find night so captivating. We are creatures of light, yet we dwell in a universe of shadow. Our quest to understand the cosmos is in truth a quest to understand the eternal night, And yet after all discovery, after all science, the eternal night remains mystery. Telescopes reach further, theories deepen, but beyond the veil, always lies more shadow. Perhaps the night is infinite, or perhaps it curves back upon itself, perhaps the universe will expand forever, or perhaps one day it will collapse back into darkness. The truth remains hidden, waiting. As we prepare to conclude this journey, we return from galaxies and black holes to the human heart, for the eternal night is not only above us, not only around us, but within us. In our dreams, in our fears, in the silence that follows each life, it waits. Yet just as stars burn within its expanse, so too do our hopes, our memories, our lights endure. And so the path leads us to our final reflection, where we step back, gather the fragments of history, myth, science, and art, and ask, what does the eternal night truly mean for us? Is it a void, or is it a mirror? Is it silence, or a song too vast to hear? In the end, the eternal night may not be answered, only embraced. The path has carried us far, from the myths of ancient cities, swallowed by shadow, to the fears that haunted medieval streets, from the silence of forgotten tombs, to the vastness of the cosmic abyss. Each step has revealed that night is not simply the absence of day, but a presence of its own, a companion, a mystery, a mirror of both fear and wonder. To walk the path to the city of eternal night is to realize that darkness has always been with us, shaping the way we tell stories, the way we live, and the way we dream. Night is contrast. It is the silence that makes sound meaningful, the shadow that makes light visible. Without it, we would not know the beauty of stars, nor the comfort of fire, nor the urgency of dawn. For ancient peoples, the eternal night gave rise to gods and myths that explained creation. For philosophers, it raised questions of existence and meaning. For scientists, it revealed the hidden structure of the cosmos. And for each of us, in our private hours, it remains a space of reflection where the noise of day falls away, and the deeper currents of thought emerge. Along this journey, we have seen how night has been painted as both terror and sanctuary. In medieval towns, it was feared as the cloak of thieves and spirits, while in deserts and oceans, it became a trusted guide, its stars pointing the way across emptiness. For poets, it was the stage of melancholy and inspiration. For astronomers, it was the doorway to the infinite. These contradictions are not accidents, they reveal the nature of night itself. It is never only one thing, but always many, always layered, always open to interpretation. The eternal night also teaches us about humility. When we lift our eyes to the sky, we confront distances beyond imagination. The galaxies, drifting through space, remind us of our smallness, yet also of our belonging. We are not apart from this darkness, we are within it, made of the same elements, forged in ancient stars. Every breath we take, every heartbeat, is the echo of processes that began in the depths of cosmic night. To recognize this is to see that the darkness is not alien, it is home. But there is also comfort in night. It is the veil that closes the day, allowing rest, recovery, and renewal. Dreams unfold in its quiet, stitching together fragments of memory and desire. Without the rhythm of night, there would be no rhythm of life. Even in our modern world of electric light, where cities glow at all hours, we find ourselves drawn back to the calm of evening, to the hush that falls when the world finally slows. In this way, the eternal night is not only vast and cosmic, it is intimate and personal. As the path narrows toward its end, one question lingers: what does the city of eternal night truly represent? Perhaps it is not a physical place, but a state of being. It may be the city of memory, where the past dwells in shadow, yet remains alive in our minds. It may be the city of silence, where the noise of life is hushed, and only the essentials remain. Or it may be the city beyond life, the unknown that waits for all of us, neither feared nor understood, but simply part of the journey. What unites all these visions is the reminder that night is never final, Even the deepest darkness carries within it the possibility of light. Stars burn in the void, fires glow in the wilderness, and even black holes whisper faintly of their existence. In our own lives too, moments of darkness often conceal unexpected sparks, resilience, wisdom, hope. To walk the path to the city of eternal night is not to surrender to emptiness, but to learn to see within shadow the outlines of meaning. As we take leave of this journey, imagine once more standing at the threshold of that eternal city. Before you stretches silence, vast and endless, yet behind you lies the path you have walked, filled with stories, myths, histories, and discoveries. The darkness ahead is unknowable, but the path itself has shaped you. And in that realization, the night ceases to be frightening. It becomes instead a companion, quiet, enduring, and eternal. So the journey does not end, not truly. Each evening, when the sun falls, we return again to the gates of the city of eternal night. Each dream, each reflection, each glance at the stars, is another step along its streets. Perhaps we will never know its heart, never fully grasp its secrets, but perhaps that is not the point. The eternal night does not exist to be solved, it exists to be lived with, to be wondered at, to be embraced. And so we leave the path here, at the edge of silence, carrying with us the calm, the mystery, and the awe that night has always given. Tomorrow will come with light, but the night will return again, as it always has, and when it does, we may find ourselves listening for the voice of the eternal, the whisper of the infinite, the presence of the city of eternal night.